welcome Claudia Baca, who will speak to us about how we can use governance in OPM to improve performance and to make it stronger. Claudia is a project management professional. She has vast experience in the IT, telecom, and many other industries, many years of experience, not mentioning how many.
Yes.
And I would like to welcome her in Dubai and to the Congress. Thank you very much, Claudia.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? All right, I'm so pleased to be here to talk to you about one of my passions in life, which is organizational project management. We're going to talk for a little while this morning here about what's happening in the industry around how do organizations deliver on their strategy. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about what constitutes a high-performing organization, what's the difference that it makes to be a high-performing organization, and what do you get when you are a high-performing organization. We're also going to talk a little bit about just some fundamentals around organizational project management, so you'll understand what these are and what we're talking about when we talk about organizational project management. And then last but not least, I'm going to walk you through a couple of case studies so you can see how some organizations are starting to adopt organizational project management and what a difference it's making for them slowly but surely as they get better and better and more focused in on what they need to do to deliver their strategies. So let's start with some information around some of the current studies around strategy execution. This chart comes from the Standish report, the chaos summary that was published this year in 2014. As you know, these are IT type projects, but what we're seeing in the industry is that most of our projects are not doing that well. You know, we have 53% of our projects are late, they're over budget, they're not delivering features and functions that we expected them to deliver. We have another 31% of our projects that don't even get used. They were either canceled midstream or we end up never even using the product that was being created for the organization. And then finally, 16%, only 16% of our projects are actually being delivered on time the way we expected them to be delivered. What's interesting about that, that's IT perspective. Let's look at another perspective. This is from the Project Management Institute. From the Project Management Institute, the Pulse of the Profession survey that they do every year, this is the 2014 Pulse of the Profession report, 38% of the projects that we have seen are late, they're over budget, or they're not delivering what they had committed to deliver in the first place. 38% of what we do. Another 36% are failing, that we are not delivering what we expected to deliver. So we're setting up these huge projects, small projects, it doesn't make any difference. Our numbers are not very good. The Standish report actually talks about the fact that the numbers continue to decrease, that we are doing worse and worse and worse year by year, actually delivering on our strategy. What the good news here is that 25% of our projects are successful. 25% out of all of the projects they surveyed. And I'll give you a little bit of statistics in a few minutes about who gets surveyed for a Pulse of the Profession. When we start looking at the delivery of projects and the delivery of the strategies of the organization, one of the things that we can look at is a PMI published publication that was done by the Economic Intelligence Unit. And that basically when they went out and started talking to all sorts of organizations about what does it mean to deliver on your strategy and how hard is this to make this happen, they were really starting to find out there isn't a one-size-fits-all type approach here. There isn't a silver bullet for making strategy execution happen and happen well in organizations. What they're finding though is getting the C-suite involved and making sure that the leadership is in place, as John was mentioning some of his leadership programs, making sure leadership is in place and driving the right work and the right governance in the organizations is making a big difference for how do we deliver against our strategies. Also, what they're starting to find is better feedback mechanisms. Are we all taking the time and trouble to look at what are we really going to deliver, what are the benefits we're going to deliver, and how are we incrementally delivering those benefits back to the organization. So having the feedback loops in place so that everybody understands exactly what's going to be delivered at what point in time. And then being smart about the resources. You know, how are we really using our people? How are we using our contractors? Are we using them appropriately in order to really deliver the strategies of the organization? I want to take you back now to the Pulse of the Profession report. I mentioned that a few minutes ago with some of the statistics that we're starting to see across the industry. But really, what was happening here with the Pulse of the Profession report is actually done every single year. It started back in 2006. And PMI actually goes out and surveys over 2,500 different organizations and leaders in these different organizations to try to find out what is happening in our industry and how is strategy execution really happening. And of course, this is a worldwide survey information that is brought forward, so we can really get a feel for what is happening everywhere. Now, when you start thinking about organizational project management and the delivery of strategy, you start looking at some of these key findings of the Pulse of the Profession. Organizations agree strategy execution is really important to them, and we're finding that over and over again in the Pulse of the Profession surveys that are happening. But yet, 61% of them, of our organizations are saying, we struggle, we don't know how to make this happen. So how do we go about making organizational project management, which is really a strategy execution framework, how do we make that happen in organizations? When we start getting our executives involved, we start seeing a difference. And that's because we're starting to execute against the strategy. And organizations that are getting smart about how the executives are put in place, how we start looking at the delivery of our strategy, they're putting in high-performing PMOs. And these PMOs are what's really making a difference for delivering on the strategies of the organization. Now, let's go back to that 25% of project managers, or excuse me, projects that deliver well, that was from the last Pulse of the Profession survey. So 25%. What are the characteristics of those organizations that they deliver on their strategy? When we start going out into the industry and start talking to different organizations, these are the types of things that we see over and over again in different organizations. A best-in-class or a high-performing organization is going to take the time to understand what is the strategy. Then they're going to take the time to figure out what initiatives need to be put into place in order to be able to deliver on that strategy. And they'll constantly evaluate what's going on based on changing conditions within their own organization, as well as changing conditions in their markets. So they're constantly evaluating what are the initiatives I should put into place that are going to make a difference for my organization. These best-in-class organizations project the results of every single initiative. They know exactly what they're going to deliver. They know exactly what are the benefits that are going to be delivered. They project what those are going to be. They also understand what is incrementally going to be delivered, not just at the end or 2 years later, but what are the incremental benefits that are going to be delivered. Are we change controlling out our benefits as we're actually starting to deliver those? Are we really watching that and understanding what it takes in order to deliver the strategies of the organization via each one of these different projects? Best-in-class organizations know every single one of their resources. They know exactly who you are, they know exactly what you deliver, and they make sure that their top resources are applied to the top projects. So there's really a lot of resource allocation going on, but it's very much very strategic perspective, making sure that we're putting the right people on the right projects. These organizations put accountability structures in place. We have situations where the executives in the organization hand off strategies to the next level, and to the next level, and to the next level. So we get to the point where a single engineer, a single developer in an organization knows exactly what they should do every single day. We never want to give that single developer or that single engineer the ability to pick and choose what they want to do every single day. Because if they do, they're driving the strategies of your organization. And you need to make sure they're on point to deliver exactly what you want them to deliver. So they're very, very clear about who their resources are and exactly what are they working on, and that they have the accountability structures in place. Best-in-class organizations have governance put into place. They have visibility into all levels of the organization. There aren't any surprises. Everything's very systematic. Everything's very, very predictable. We know exactly what's going to be delivered and exactly how it's going to be delivered. And they always make sure that they build sustainable processes for everything we've just talked about. Everybody knows what the process is. Everybody delivers against that process, and it's sustainable. So when a key resource leaves the organization, Everybody knows exactly what has to be done, and somebody steps into that work and takes over for those processes of that part of the organization. What we've been really talking about here, these characteristics of high-performing organizations, this is really organizational project management. Organizational project management is a strategy execution framework that when it's applied correctly to an organization, it gives the organization the ability to actually deliver what it needs to deliver its strategy. So we're talking about portfolio management here, that the portfolio is in charge of creating, managing, building the portfolio of projects to guarantee that we're going to put the right things in place and that the right initiatives are being built in order to deliver the values to the organization that need to be delivered. We're talking about program and project management as the delivery arm. We are the ones that are going to deliver back to the organization exactly what we said we were going to. We're going to deliver on time. We're going to deliver on budget, on scope, and on benefit. So we're always looking at the benefits portion of what we are delivering back to the organization. And then finally, another one of the elements of organizational project management is the actual environment itself. What are we doing in our organizations to support the fact that we're putting the right projects in place? What are we doing to support governance? What are we doing to support? Are we putting sponsorship in place? Can our people get trained? Do we do benchmarking appropriately against other organizations similar to us? What are we doing? These are, again, the components of organizational project management. If you take a look at this diagram, it's really all about taking the strategies of the organization, feeding it down to the portfolios for the portfolio to decide what should be done in order to make sure that the strategy has been put into place, then putting in programs and projects to guarantee that we're actually going to deliver on that strategy, and then pushing everything through systematically, predictably, down to the operations department, and then finally building all of the feedback loops so we understand exactly, are we delivering on target, and making the adjustments necessary at the program level, as well as at the portfolio level, as well as the strategy level, to guarantee that we are going to continuously review the cycle and deliver on the strategies of the organization. So really, organizational project management is really all about tying together your value decision making with your value delivery and fulfillment, making sure that the whole structure works for the organization and that it brings the strategies of the organization to light. Organizational project management is about alignment and systematic management. You know, I know you've all been in organizations where there's all sorts of drama every time something goes crazy. There is no drama in these organizations because we all just deliver like we're supposed to, and we deliver the strategies of the organization. All right, let me walk you through a couple of case studies now, give you a little bit of information about what some organizations are doing as they adopt organizational project management. What are they seeing and what is happening? So this first organization is a managed healthcare organization. They actually manage for many different sectors of their government healthcare for their individuals within their organizations. They're a nonprofit in the American terms, that is a tax-exempt situation where they don't make money to make profit. They make money in order to be able to feed it back into their businesses, okay? The business focus for this organization, the strategy of this organization, is all about operational excellence. The more money that they save on the operations of the work, the more they can feed back into serving the underserved and the people of their constituency to make sure that they are getting the right level of health care. So for this organization, when we went in and started looking at what they were doing, their as-is model, what they were doing today, what we realized is that they had this very, very small budget that was set aside for project work every single year. That's all they had, and every year they couldn't get through all of the projects with that small set budget that they had. They had situations where the work just isn't getting done. The business is incredibly unhappy with how everything's been going. It seems like every time a project gets started, they're supposed to finish in December. Oh, we need another phase. Let's go to March. Oh, we need another phase. Let's go to June. And nothing ever gets done. And it's because nothing was planned out right in the very first place. they have multiple categories of funding. So they have a category for this group, and then a category for this group, and another one. So it's not unusual for a single engineer in the organization to end up with 3 different number 1 projects on their plate, and they're making decisions about what are they really going to work on. So as we went in and started looking around and understanding what the as-is model is, we realized, and after doing an assessment, that they really, I mean, they had a portfolio, and they called it portfolio management, but really what was happening is that it really was 4 or 5 different portfolios. It wasn't one combined portfolio. So there really wasn't a portfolio in place to determine what was the right work for the organization. There was no alignment between the business. The group of people that were out working the projects were just working projects, and there really wasn't any decision-making, no governments put into place to guarantee that the right work was actually being done to actually move the strategies of the organization forward. And then finally, when we got in, we realized that they had project managers in every department. So it wasn't nothing unusual to walk in and actually see 3 project managers all working on the same project. So with that, we decided what the as-is model is, what needed to be put into place, what was missing from that organizational project management strategy execution framework. What we decided to do was put an improvement plan in place, and they decided to go after a huge improvement metric, that 25% of their projects would achieve benefit realization by the end of the year in 2010. They had no portfolio management. They had lousy project management. They had no program management. For them to say that 25% of their organizations and their projects were going to deliver benefits realization in 2 years was an incredible feat, because they're missing all of the fundamentals. So with that, they put their improvement projects into place, started working on building some stabilized project management processes, starting to build benefits realization into program management, and then trying to build the portfolio to try to make sure that we're doing the right work of the organization. So the activities they put into place was, again, to prioritize and select the projects. They got the business to step up, to say, these are the projects that we want to have put into place. Here's what's important to us. They started looking at roles and responsibilities. They decided to put in a RACI diagram for the entire organization. It took them 1 solid year to get everyone in the organization to agree who was really responsible, who was accountable, who got consulted, and who was informed. An entire year for the organization. But they finally got rid of those redundant roles where there was more than 1 project manager on any single project. They started some alignment work to make sure that they understood the strategic pillars and what were the projects and the programs and how would they be put into place against the strategic pillars. They decided to put benefits realization in place. They decided not to take on program management, but at least to start working on project management and benefits realization around the projects to make sure that they could actually see some results for the work that they were doing. They also decided at that point in time to build sustainable processes in place for everything that they were doing, so they'd have repeatability and sustainability all the way through the organization. When we start looking at what happened with this organization, they really are pretty much a success story. Remember I told you they had that slim budget that they worked on? That slim budget remained the same year after year, but after a couple of years of building the processes and getting better at organizational project management, they're now able to get many more projects done within that same window. They're getting so many projects done, they have money left over, and they use that money to pay for their next set of improvements. So they're getting better and better at operational excellence, getting the work of the organization done, and making sure that they're then delivering against that, and making sure that they have money left over in order to be able to actually fund their next set of improvements. The PMO actually started out in the organization as being a project management office, and slowly but surely what's happened is they've turned them into an enterprise project management office. So now they are working at the top levels of the organization. They are associated with the executives, and they are now the enterprise project management office in charge of all work that has to be done across the organization. They've become what we call the go-to organization. If you want something done at this organization, you go to this EPMO. They've taken over the business analyst functions in the organization, and they've taken over several quality assurance type functions in the organization. Now that they want work done, they go to the EPMO to put that work into place because they know what's going to happen. They know it's going to be done very, very well. Also, the PMO director is now the vice president of projects. So personally and professionally, the EPMO has been promoted, where the person who used to run the PMO is now a vice president in the organization and in charge of all of the projects of the organization. So that's our healthcare study. I have a financial institution case study I'm going to try to walk you through kind of quickly here. This organization is worldwide. They are a financial organization, and they do work around the entire world. And even though they're into finance, their strategy is about operational excellence. It's really about how well can they perform internally, which allows them to perform externally even better. So they really take a lot of time and trouble to look at their operations and to guarantee that their operations are being done well so that they can deliver their strategies. This organization, it's a very, very highly functional organization, very, very structured, very, very systematic in the work that it does. They don't have a designated project management role. So you might have a title of director and you would be a project manager. You might have a title of a manager and you're a project manager. So there really isn't a project management role put into place. They have a situation where they've got so much work going on, they really don't know how to get their arms around everything, and they really have a difficult time trying to figure out what projects should be worked, even though there's all sorts of work going on and lots of work happening in the organization. They're not quite sure they're actually delivering the strategies of the organization because of all the work they are doing, and no single project list is really what it comes down to. Their project list is so big, they can't resource it. And they use an awful lot of outside organizations in order to be able to source that work. So they're constantly going through the procurement process of trying to make sure everything's being done well and getting all of the work done, and yet they don't know if this is the right work, okay? So this organization, we went in and took a look at this organization. Okay, so there's no role around project management, but yet they've got a really, really tight, strictly enforced project management methodology that everyone is expected to follow. But yet nobody's a project manager, okay? This organization, they've got conflicting priorities. And it seems like in this organization, whatever vice president or whatever leader has the most influence is getting the most projects. So instead of being systematic about what really is going to deliver on the strategy, the organization's spending a lot of time taking care of the higher influencers to make sure they're getting the work that needs to be done. So there's conflicting priorities all the way across the organization. And even though we've got that strict project management methodology put into place, we're really not delivering. So we're not getting things done. And a lot of our organizations, we really have to start at the basics. If you're not getting the projects delivered, that's the first step of getting your strategy executed. So you've got to tie down and you've got to make sure that the project management process works within the organization. For this organization, their improvement goal is pretty straightforward. We have got to be able to create a list, a manageable list of projects, and we have to be able to deliver them right. We have to find a way to actually make these things stop at the point in time when they should stop. So for this organization, what they decided to take on for improvement activities is they wanted to put some foundational work around portfolio management into place and make sure that they have the mechanisms in place to select and prioritize the work of the organization. They had no governance. So another major factor that they put into place was to actually build a governance structure. The governance structure now is built all the way through the life cycle of the projects and allows the organization the ability to kill projects that are not necessary, that are not going to fulfill the strategy. And it may be that it was a bad idea in the first place, or it may be that it's not going to deliver what we thought it was going to deliver, and therefore we're going to find a way to go ahead and kill that off now because we're not going to get the benefits that we expected. We put into place in this organization a project management communication matrix because they're so functional. We had to build a structure for how do we talk to each other? How do we work through the silos of the organization in order to make sure that we're going to deliver on the strategy? And then, of course, we had to put good sponsorship in place. We were missing sponsorship across the organization. Now, what's happened with this organization? They're actually working on putting into place better strategic targets and being able to deliver on those strategic targets and delivering their projects on time and on budget. So we're starting to see some major improvements in this organization where they're really starting to get to just the project management metrics. That's the first foundational piece of work that we needed to put into place. I'm going to go ahead and skip over the, here's the results. Increased project success rates have gone from 10% to over 80%. Just with those foundational elements, they're starting to see that kind of improvement in their delivery. All right. We also have the governance put into place, and we have more focus now on the real strategic initiatives we're now delivering against the strategies of the organization. Okay, I have a technology case study, and I'm going to just kind of skip through that. I'm going to ask you, though, to the white papers that have been delivered. I have 4 or 5 other case studies within the white paper that you might find of interest. So you might want to spend some time taking a look at some of these other ones. And let me take you back now to, for every organization that we deal with that is adopting organizational project management, the most important thing is for each organization to understand what are its values. There are aspects of organizational project management that should be put into place in every organization. But there's also customization that needs to be looked at. You need to understand what's the proper fit in each organization for organizational project management to work. We want to make sure that we are looking at what's important for every single organization before you just say, I'm going to adopt organizational project management, okay? Most of the organizations that you'll read about in the case studies will not allow us to use their names. They see this as their competitive edge, and they do not want their competitors to know exactly what they're using and what's making a difference in their performance and why are their business results better than what they were before. Now, I mentioned earlier these organizations did an assessment. What we did is we actually used, we first diagnosed via an assessment. And the product that we used, and you know there's lots of organizational project management maturity models out there. There are a lot of different models out there. The one that we used is the standard OPM 3, Organizational Project Management Maturity Model, that was delivered out of the Project Management Institute starting in 2003. So we use this OPM 3 model and use that as the comparison of the organization against the model to draw a picture of what is the as-is model. And then knowing what organizational project management is, we understand what do we have to do to go from this as-is to the to-be model. So what do we have to do to make that happen? And we use OPM 3 to make that happen. OPM 3 is best practice based. It's created by volunteers worldwide, several of which are actually in the room today, which is kind of exciting. And we have best practices around what are the portfolio processes that should be put into place. Program processes as well as project management processes. And then we also look at what we call organizational enablers. What has to be in place to support this entire structure for an organization to be able to deliver on its strategy. So our approach then, we diagnose via an assessment. We review the findings of the organization. We then determine the right level of organizational project management for the organization. And we then implement improvements to get to the right level of organizational project management in order for this organization to be able to deliver on its strategy. And we continuously improve it. We constantly look at what's going on, what do we have to do in order to put the continuous improvement in place. So that was the agenda. Again, if you want more information about the case studies, be sure to read the white paper. There are several more out there. And thank you very much.